Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for another Monday mini-sode. And this is a part two to our discussion that we had last week about making sure that your items are shipped safely for Q4.
That's right. As we're coming to the end of November here, we're really starting to ramp up shipping. Right? Items are starting to fly, and like I mentioned in the last Monday mini, some of these items might be things that are unique sales for you. Things you don't normally sell, and so shipping's a little different, and you're having to pay very close attention to make sure you're not getting any returns. So go check out our first episode if you hadn't watched that yet. But today, we're going to be talking the part 2 ways to make sure your items get to your customers safely this Q4.
Yeah, and so I want to start with one that maybe not everybody will, agree, but I'm a big believer that the less an item is in transport, the greater the chances of it arriving safely. Right. So like in reselling, usually the rule of thumb is you only want to touch an item 3 times: when you source it, when you list it, when you ship it. And that's it. Right. Because any other times it means that you're either losing time because you're having to adjust something, or you're spending time with the item, or it may break. Right. You keep trying to move it from place to place. And if you're shipping something ground and it's very expensive, right, you're talking about something that's going to be on the road for maybe 5 days, maybe 7 days, maybe 10. If it's international, it could be, anywhere up to 30 days, right? So that means being taken off and on of airplanes, taken off and on of vehicles, being transported in some kind of cart somewhere on a conveyor belt. And so sometimes it may be better just to pay a little bit more to get that expedited shipping. Just because, that's less time that's out there. If I have anything, unless it's super heavy, then, the whole scenario changes. But if it's anything that isn't super heavy and I can pay maybe $5 to $7 more to ship that out and get it to the person faster, I'll do it, because I already made so much on the item. It's worth it to me to just spend that $5 to $7, get it there quicker, great customer service, and there's less chances of anything happening to that item.
That's great. Our next one is very, very, very useful for items that are fragile. So one of the things that we all know how to do is to bubble wrap items. Bubble wrap is great. Definitely has a place, but there is something, bubble wrap is going to help prevent your item from moving around inside the box too much, from getting dings inside of the box. But when there's a lot of pressure added to the box, that item is still at risk. The bubble is only a little bit of air in between. You want to add more rigid nature to whatever it is you're packing. Take some cardboard after you've already bubble wrapped your item, lay it out flat, and then roll your item. We have a video on this where we talk about shipping mugs. But if you take cardboard and kind of imagine you're just wrapping the item in cardboard as well. Now, you don't even have to fold the edges. In fact, I would say if you kind of wrap an item so you almost have a tube of cardboard that's over top of the bubble wrap, that is going to be very, very useful, because the other 2 ends that are open are actually going to serve, those are going to be the strongest points. You could probably almost stand on your box on that part right there, and it's going to provide a lot of protection, because just the way the physics work, protecting that item, it's still going to have some risk the other direction. But again, sometimes even kind of folding an item box, you can almost make it like a diamond over something, and you've got 4 points of very strong protection on top of the bubble wrap. So it's going to help your item from moving around inside, which we talked about on the last episode. And it's just going to add that extra rigid nature to your boxes and to your items, and it's going to make sure they get there safely.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example, because it's not just mugs, it's not just cups. It could be anything that has the possibility of snapping, right? So for example, recently I've been selling a ton of duck decoys, and the easiest place for a duck decoy to break is at the beak, right? Because, maybe a corner gets hit and the beak gets moved and it can snap, or the tail, right? So what I do is I bubble wrap it, and then I will kind of put a covering over the beak of cardboard. Right. And so therefore, it doesn't matter. There's still space between the box, then the packing paper, then there's the cardboard, and then there's a little bit of space between cardboard and the bubble wrap, and then you have the bubble wrap. Right. And I do that with any item. If let's say it's a figurine, right? If it's a figurine that has an arm that's extended, I'll get those every once in a while. You'll get some, I don't know, some ceramic Mickey. Let's say it's a Statue of Liberty Mickey. Okay. And Mickey is holding the torch. You want to make sure you have that cardboard around that section so it doesn't get hit. And if it does, it's not going to hit the bubble wrap or the arm. It's going to hit the cardboard before it ever gets to it. So using bubble wrap kind of as like wrapping paper, it does help you. And it doesn't have to look pretty, by the way. It can look ugly. All that matters is that it gets there. Now, you may get a neutral feedback where somebody says, I don't like how somebody packed this cardboard. It has happened, but that's very rare. It's better to get the item there safely. And I've been doing that all this Q4. Man, these duck decoys are just flying right now. So anyways, just something to think about. All right, do you want me to tackle the peanuts part here?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So in reselling, most people say don't ever use peanuts. At least that's been my understanding. I know with Amazon, you're not allowed to when you send out FBA shipments. And it's kind of frowned upon, because obviously the environmental implications. But there is a time for peanuts. And so I'll give you an example. I recently sold a taxidermied duck. And the duck had a wingspan of I think it was about 2 feet. And then it had web feet, super sensitive. Like literally, I could just snap it super easily. Now, I couldn't necessarily bubble wrap it, right? Because even while I was bubble wrapping, there was a possibility that I would snap the feet on the taxidermy duck on accident. I know it sounds terrible for some people. Sorry. Or like the wing. I could have snapped the wing. So what I had to do is I had to very lightly put bubble wrap around, and then I had to put in the packing peanuts. And what the packing peanuts did is it stabilized the duck inside, kept it from moving so it wouldn't get damaged. And at the same time, it provided padding because I put that duck in the peanuts, and then I sealed that box, and then I floated that box in another box, and it arrived safely. So you always want to make sure that, if it's something super sensitive, if you ever ship out, let's say you sourced a model sailing ship, right? Those sails and all those, little intricate details there can very easily snap. And if you bubble wrap, it could snap. So you got to be very careful. And sometimes packing peanuts will do the job. So be aware of that. Take a look at it. It's interesting because I Google, how to ship this and how to ship that. And sometimes there's no answers. And I think the reason is because it's just, there's a lot of generalities, right? And so if you got to use peanuts to make sure that you're shipping out a sensitive item and it can't move, you got to do it. That's one way to make sure it arrives safely.
That's good. Sometimes too, you get stuck shipping something that's a little bit bigger than you're used to shipping. And if you're used to shipping with just the traditional packing tape, it's not going to necessarily be strong enough to hold a big, heavy item. Now, if you've seen Orlando's Franken boxes or even just his regular boxes, the ones he would ship into Amazon, if you follow us on Instagram, he would use the eBay tape, and he would put like so much eBay tape on the box that it actually looked like it was just an eBay box, because he would use hundreds of strips of eBay tape. That is one way of making sure that there's some strength there to hold your item inside the box and it won't open up on you. But there's an easier way to do it. And sometimes it's important to get strapping tape. Like strapping tape it's going to be reinforced sometimes with some kind of filament, like a fiberglass or something at a cross stitch, and it's going to be almost unbreakable. Like it could be cut pretty easily if it needs to be, but it's not going to just rip through the box. And so if you've got something really heavy, you're shipping books, you're shipping, a big VCR, you're shipping a big electronic of some kind that's 40 or 50 pounds, you're going to want to make sure that when the person at the post office who's not being super careful with it just grabs it from the side and lifts it up, that the bottom doesn't fall out. Yep. That was the worst thing you have to deal with if you've ever helped somebody move or you've ever moved in your life. Is when you're holding the box and the bottom is falling out of it. You don't want that to be your item. I could just imagine the customer, they go to pick up their item from their porch and it made it all the way there, but it falls out right on their porch and breaks. And then you get the return because it was packed poorly. So use strapping tape if you need it. It'd be overkill for most things, but it is something to have in your arsenal. One big, roll of strapping tape will probably last you a long, long time if you're only using it for the one-off big items.
Yeah, and some of you are like, where do I get this? I usually get it from U-Haul. It's like $5 for a roll. And it lasts me about 3 items, but I go overkill on that tape. I've used it, for example, on a vintage Singer sewing machine. I used it on what are those little tolls that you pay on a bus? Well, you probably are too young to remember, but when you get on a bus, you'd have to put quarters in a machine. And so I had one of those that sold, and it weighed 80 pounds. And so I had to use strapping tape. I had I've had a bunch of items that I've had to use that filament and it arrived safely. You want that peace of mind too. And I got to tell you that eBay tape is horrible. My go-to tape from American Bow Boy is better, but sometimes you need that extra filament tape to make sure that your item will arrive safely. All right, and last of all, you need to pack your item as if it's going to get dropped, or maybe if it's going to be used in a football game or whatever it is. Like, you have to. I'm not saying every item you get, you drop it 15 feet to make sure it's good, because then you might damage all your stuff. But you want to make sure that you pack it that way. I've always had the rule that I'll never write fragile on any of my boxes because it's packed so well that it doesn't matter what happens to my item. And I do find, do you think people really go, this is the fragile box, I must carefully and lightly carry this over? Like, I don't think that happens. I've heard the opposite.
No, yeah, I've actually had items like I remember in high school, I got an envelope of pictures that somebody sent, and they put on the thing, please do not bend. And I got that envelope, and it had been folded like every possible way you can fold it. It's like it's a person, people were, I don't know if it's multiple people, it's like a joke in the office, like, all right, now you bend it. It's like if it would have not said, please do not bend, I'm sure it would have never been bent. And I'm not saying it was, the USPS would always do that, or the post office would always do that. But you are going to get the person who's like, oh, you're going to tell me how to do my job. And then, so it's just better not to worry about it.
Yeah, agreed. So make sure that you're doing your job. Listen, it's always better to overpack, right? And make sure to arrive safely than to underpack and have a damaged item. So hopefully all these tips helped you guys ship out items safely for Q4 so you can spend your time focusing on sourcing, on listing, and other items instead of dealing with messages and insurance companies and all that comes with a damaged item. And with that being said, hope you're having a great Q4. And as always, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling.
Peace.